What is good, everybody? Welcome to another Gold Standard podcast on the Gold Standard and the Fans First Sports Network. I'm Rob Stats Guerrera here with a very special guest to help break this draft down for us from fantasylife.com. Thor Nystrom is here. What's up, Thor?
How you doing, man?
Oh, it's good to see you again. I always like talking with you. I always tell everybody I'm not a draft expert. I'm not a college football expert, but I always promise to talk to people who are smarter than me about these things. Hence, here you are.
It's good to be back.
All right. Let's dive right into it because I'm a little worried. The way the 49ers have set up their offseason, they absolutely have to crush this draft. I feel like to even really fill out the roster in a competitive way. How realistic is it that the 49ers can get two plug-and-play starters on the defensive line in this draft without, finding a diamond in the rough in round 7?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's plausible. Some more holes have opened up on that roster, so I'm curious sort of how they do that. But the interior defensive line class is really good this year. So I mean, if as long as you take the second guy by the second round, you're gonna have to earmark those first couple picks. I was looking at my sheet. So the second pick, 43, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, yes, there will be two immediate starting interior defensive linemen available to you in the top 43, with those two picks. But yeah, they'll just have to see what they want to do.
So if they want to get two starting D linemen, you think they got to go D line with the first two picks?
Unless in round 3, you could get a guy like, for instance, a guy that I love to take in my Vikings mock drafts that I put the PFF screenshots, a guy like Deon Walker. Like the guys that you take in round 3, they have it. It's the guys who do not have unimpeachable evaluations, right? But they have starter toolkits. Like, for instance, Deon Walker, he's the mutant in this class. He's 6'7.5", 350 pounds. And when he plays with any sort of leverage at all, he's unblockable. and he can cave in the backfield as a pass rusher as well. Like 2023, he had 7.5 sacks and like an elevated pressure rate, which is ridiculous for a 350 pounder. But the problem with him is he pops up at the snap way too much. Like it was funny at the Senior Bowl in Mobile. They had a interior offensive lineman from North Carolina named Willie Lampkin there, who Lampkin is one of the more unique offensive line prospects you'll ever see because Lampkin's 5'10". Let me see it. Let me pull up his measurements. He's real small. It's like 5'10", 275. Lampkin stonewalled Deon Walker several times in one-on-ones in Mobile because the reason that Willie Lampkin was an all ACC offensive guard, it's because he wins the leverage game every single snap. Mm-hmm. And the reason that Deon Walker isn't dominant every snap is because he gives away the leverage on a chunk of them. And so Willie Lampkin it was David against Goliath, and the slingshot was the leverage. Right. But like whole point being for the 49ers, if you have a conviction on a guy like that, like I have a personal conviction on Deon Walker, that the reason he begins to lose the leverage game is because of the amount of snaps that he's playing. And my supposition is if we cut those snaps down and we use him situationally as I feel that he should be used, then we will get the leverage Deon Walker that is impossible to block on the limited snaps where we're using him, at least initially, till hopefully he finds his way into more full-time snaps. If you have a conviction on a guy like that for round 3, you could certainly do that if you were the 49ers. But if you want to feel really good that you're getting two plug-and-play ones, I think you have to take the second one at 43.
Can you get two difference makers at defensive line if you did use the first two picks on linemen?
Potentially, yeah, because of how deep it is at the top. Right. Like, and I'm curious, like, how that ends up distributing. But like, Mason Graham, we all assume he's going to go in the top 10, although how fun would that be if he dropped to 11, huh? The Kenneth Grant is his teammate is fabulous. That's another guy that I fetishize for the Vikings. Love Walter Nolen, Darius Alexander from Toledo, probably top half of the second round. Derek Harmon from Oregon is going to be back half of the first. TJ Sanders, Tyleek Williams, I mentioned Walker. I really like Jordan Phillips from Maryland. He's young, he's big, and he's athletic. But yeah, I mean, Yeah, I think, with the 43rd pick, yeah, I think you get a second a guy that immediate starter that could be a difference maker for sure.
You mentioned Walter Nolen. I
Yeah.
feel like at the Senior Bowl, it was, oh my God, Walter Nolen is incredible. Now I'm seeing things like some people don't even have him in their top 100 players. Where is Walter Nolen in your book, and can the 49ers get him outside of round one?
I have him as the third IDL behind the two Michigan guys. I really like Walter Nolen. I think he gets nitpicked, number one, because it's the thing of like everyone's had exposure to him because he was one of the top recruits in his high school class. He was either like 1, 2, or 3. Like he was way up there.
He was one.
He was one, yeah, and then he was, playing right away at A&M, and then obviously, the first couple years there, and then at Mississippi last year, high profile place. They played in a lot of big games. I think it's the nitpick thing. I think it's then the second one is his frame is a little bit smaller, and then it's not character things, but like there's, it's the same. Who is the other guy? With James Pierce, where it's like, oh, is the motor always going to be running hot? Is he always going to show up with the lunch pail every day for practice? Like I don't put as much stock into that. The impact on the field speaks for itself, and the body type is fine for the kind of game that he has. He compares himself to Aaron Donald, which is a bit apocryphal, but that is the line of continuum that he exists on. Like he has, it's the underside, the his measurements. I mean, at the combine, it was just a hair under 6'4", but 296. But he has the country strength with the quickness. That's the thing that reminds you of Donald, like that, because there's not many dudes that have that level of strength with that level of quickness, and so it just sort of presents a puzzle, right? And that's why he wreaks the havoc that he does. I don't have him as the top IDL in the class, but yeah, I mean, I'm bullish on him as the third one, and you could absolutely see a scenario where he slips because how many first round IDLs that we have? Someone is going to get pushed to the back of that line, yeah, and it's possible that dude falls to the top of the second, right? Whether it's him, whether it's Derek Carmen. Right. I mean, one of those guys could get pushed back there, but they're both first round players. Absolutely.
You mentioned Mason Graham possibly falling to the 49ers. That's one of the questions I was going to ask you. I feel like what it comes down to is how many quarterbacks go in the top 10, right?
Yeah.
Because that's really going to push everybody else the 49ers might be interested in down the line. So how many quarterbacks do you think will go in the top 10?
I think it's going to be 2. I know that there's people that are bullish on Jackson Dart, like making the late charge here. Maybe into the first round, into the back half. I could see that because I could see an organization talking themselves into him. I think there's too many questions on that eval to go in the top 10. But I think if you get the 2, I don't think Shadir. I don't buy this stuff of him falling. To me, that is an all day top 5 pick. And then the thing beyond that would be you need Jacksonville to not take the IDL. I think that's where it begins to open up. And then you need Tyler Warren to go above you. And Genty, right? I think if those things happen, you don't necessarily need the third, but it's going to require a couple things, right, to get through those wickets. You're going to have to get lucky, but maybe you wake up that day on the right side of the bed and the sun is shining down on you. We'll see.
And you think if somehow Mason Graham is there at 11, no doubt the Niners should run to the podium with the card.
They should. Yeah. I mean, like already have the name written down for the second. If the name is different, the pick before you, you got it right. You turn that right in. Stay up at the podium. We got another card coming for you.
Okay. I have seen, since you brought it up, multiple 49ers beat writers have Tyler Warren going at 11. I know that would cause a revolt among us content creators and a lot of fans. How crazy would it be if the Niners picked Ty Warren at 11?
Well, on the one hand, crazy, but on the other hand, makes all the sense in the world, right? Like the crazy thing is you have these roster holes, but then on the other hand, it's the all-time toy for Shanahan. I mean, my God, that guy was built in a lab for Shanahan. You're gonna have to tase Shanahan, handcuff him, and lock him out of the war room. I think, like, if Warren's there on the board at 11, I wouldn't advocate for it in the 49ers room for the reasons stated. But again, that dude is Shanahan's wet dream. Warren's a guy who has a couple of the skill sets of some of those Swiss Army knives shoved into one dude, right? Like you have Kittle elements, you have Deebo as a tight end element with the amount of the manufactured touch work that he does, which is different for a tight end. Like it evokes Brock Bowers from the last class, but Brock Bowers was 3 inches shorter and 30 pounds or whatever lighter than Warren. And Warren's an elite athlete as well. But yeah, you can bring him into the backfield. They did wildcat stuff with him last year around the goal line. Certainly, you could have a sledgehammer there. You can do the end around stuff with him. You could do trick play stuff with him. That my favorite play from last year was when he was the center and then just ran a post route right after he snapped it and they tossed it up and he mossed someone in the end zone. You can just do all these different things. So like it's Shanahan's wet dream. So like again, on that side, it doesn't surprise you at all. But on the other side of like from the John Lynch perspective, that's where I would be surprised.
Yes, I would agree. They Lynch wants to build his team from the defensive line out. It's really their philosophy. I agree. I don't put it past them though. Like I won't sleep easy until that pick is gone and Tyler Warren hasn't been announced with his name on the card.
Shanahan's going to spend the next 6 weeks in Lynch's ear and sending him texts, or he'll send him like clips of Warren posterizing people or something. It'll be the middle of the night, like on a Wednesday, at the end of March. And Lynch is like, stop sending me Tyler Warren clips, man. Go to sleep.
It's not happening, Kyle.
Yeah.
The other guy that I think honestly is built in the lab for Kyle is Cam Skattebo. Like, seems like the perfect guy to just drop in the middle of this 49ers lineup. I mean, there is nobody who has more fun highlights to watch, I feel like, than Cam Skattebo. Where could he go? Should I dream about Cam Skattebo in a 49ers uniform?
I wouldn't say dream on it, but I think there's a path. And the path is, as you know, outside of the McCaffrey trade, but think about it that in the drafts between Kyle and between his dad, they love to take the dudes who slip through the cracks to day 3. And it's possible that the NFL will be punitive with Cam Skattebo in this crazy deep running back. It's like we were talking about before with the round 1 IDLs. This running back class, the best I've seen in the decade doing the draft work, there's guys that were like, there's no chance a guy like that falls out at day 2. Because that guy in the last running back class, he would have been one of the first 3 or 4 off the board. There's no way he's not going on day 2. A few of those guys are going to get pushed out at day 2, right? And so Skattebo, we'll see if he runs the 40 at his pro day. He did not at the combine. And if he does, what time does he get? But like, if he runs over a 4.6 flat, or if he elects not to run it, which is going to force teams to put the 4.6 flat number, I think, in there for him, that's where he could potentially lose a couple of the tiebreakers. It's the one thing he lacks, right? Is like the high end track speed. On the field, though, he has the acceleration, right? Like, and I didn't think it was any coincidence that the test he did was the jumps. As you see the acceleration, I mean, he doesn't have top end speed, but he gets to it in like 2 steps every time, right? So it's that's what you get with him. And to your point about the Shanahan system, that you love the contact balance and you love the acceleration. Yes. And that dude's got those 2 things in friggin' spades. Those 2 things, you would put him up there with the very top guys of this class. The other things that you nitpick him for, some of those things are not as important in Shanahan's scheme, right? Like the high end speed, right? I mean, that's why Mike was stealing those day 3 running backs with the Broncos every year that would immediately rush for 1,000 yards because they didn't run well at the combine or their pro day or whatever, right? But they had these kind of skills. So yeah, dude, I totally agree with you. Skattebo would be a good fit. And if he falls to day 3, I think that's where it becomes in play for the 49ers.
Okay. Now correct me if I'm wrong. I think you had him 10th on your running back board, right?
I think so. Yeah. I do a lot of tinkering. So I just wanted to check the update, but yes, I still have my 10 on my board.
So all right. That gives me hope. Cause like I tell everybody, I'm not like super into the scouting. So I just like to look at the fun guys, and he looks like a super fun player that would be on the Niners. You could put him to me. I know they just brought back Kyle Juszczyk because God forbid Kyle Shanahan ever has a season without Kyle Juszczyk. But like, if you got him and you could put him in some of the Juszczyk role, you could also put him at running back. I just thought it would be a fun kind of piece that Shanahan could move around. And especially if it's, if it's a day 3 thing, then hell yeah.
For sure. Yeah. And I totally agree with that. He's a really good receiver because of he's got good hands, but then that acceleration with the contact bounce. So if you can get him the ball in space, it's really difficult for one guy to get down Cam Skattebo, right? Like Cam Skattebo going down the field, he's like remember the top at the end of Inception, the spinning top that never goes down? He's just like a huge spinning top at the end of Inception. Like it's impossible to get his legs out, or one of those punching inflatable boxing things. It just pops up every time. It's and so because of that, you get the efficiency with him as the receivers, and he can handle the heavier workload. This coming season with the 49ers, you'd have him as a mix and match guy. Well, I love your idea, simultaneously seeing, could he function in sort of a hybrid Juszczyk role next season beyond, whenever Kyle does get rid of his baby blanket.
Exactly.
He's got a new one.
Yeah, right. That is the perfect term for him. And by the way, can we stop comparing Cam Skattebo to Mike Allstott and Ron Dane? Like, just because a guy breaks tackles, that they're not the same.
Yeah, I mean, those guys are definitely bigger than Skattebo. And yeah, it's more the sledgehammer thing. With Skattebo, you get you get a little bit more agility with him. It's more the contact balance thing, the contortion thing. Really tough getting him off his feet. And then again, the other thing that goes in conjunction with that is like he can get hit and then immediately sort of accelerate back out, right? Like it's just really hard to take his center of gravity from him. And he has this button that he can push where he can like zoom out of trouble really quick. And, people focus on, either sort of the popcorn aspect of watching him or on the nitpicks of his game, without sort of getting to the heart of why he will be or will have an element of success in the NFL. Like, to what degree, we'll have to see. He's going to hang around for a long time. He's going to bring stuff to an NFL offense. He's going to bring that efficiency stuff, and these sorts of traits that we're talking about, they absolutely translate to the NFL.
On day 3, yes, please. Sign me up for that. You've convinced me. Now, I've argued that the 49ers should not do what I'm about to ask you. I don't think that they should look in this draft and say, okay, we need to replace Deebo Samuel. Let me get a Deebo Samuel type guy to fill that role for this team. But if the Niners did want to do that, Thor, who is the player that jumps to mind that would be a good fit for that?
So are we thinking are we thinking day 3 with this?
Whenever.
Okay. Yeah, it's the receiver class is it sucks this year. Like I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It's not a good receiver class. It's the running back class is that's where it's like Scrooge McDuck jumping into his pile of money. That's the running back class. But yeah, we're a bit barren with the wide receiver class. There's I got a couple possibilities. I got a couple possibilities for you to chew on. One of them is we were talking about guys that could fall. Luther Burden could fall. Luther Burden could fall to the 49ers pick in the second round. I'm not saying that I think it will happen, but it could happen. And that guy's comp in my database, I'm looking down at it right now, at least for me, is Deebo Samuel. So, I mean, will lightning strike twice with that guy in the second round? Like I said, it could happen. Like, and the reason it could is because Burden, former 5-star recruit, he started right away at Missouri. He had the strong production all 3 years, but last year was not the best. It was a step backwards, and there's contextual reasons for that. The offense wasn't as good in part because of quarterback injuries, but it also, unfortunately, I think speaks to the sort of glass ceiling of Luther Burden's game, which is the thing that he is good at, and he'll generate yards for you. It's that thing of you get him the ball within 8 yards of the line of scrimmage, right? But you're getting pretty close to that manufactured touch thing. Now remember last year at this time when I came on the show and we talked about Malachi Corley, and yes. I gave a message to 49ers Nation and said, you do not want Malachi Corley. Trust me. It's a running back playing slot receiver that doesn't run routes, and you have to give them, the extended handoffs down the line. It's not quite that bad with Burden.
Okay.
And some people try to say like, oh, we just didn't see it as much down the field at Missouri because that's just the way that they used them. It doesn't mean that he can't do it. I don't know. I see DJ Moore comps with him, and it's like, that you're starting to get a bit more logical leapy, but like where I see his eval, the high end comp there, that is Deebo. It's magic with the ball in his hands. You just have to get it to him there. And I think it's fair with his draft evaluation to acknowledge the limitations. This is a slot receiver. He's not playing outside for you. It's a black box of whether he can win downfield in the NFL. You should not just assume in his evaluation that he will be able to. In fact, you should probably assume that there's good odds that he won't. But as the slot receiver who will be the high efficiency guy, he can handle heavy volume there. And we know he's electric with the ball in his hands. If you can you have to get, creative with manufacturing those touches. Like I said, within 8 yards of line of scrimmage, but in the second round, Deebo Samuel for the 49ers, if he gets there, right? It's maybe a 10% chance, but it's a better chance than Lloyd Christmas and Dumb and Dumber. So it's at least something to ponder. The other couple that I would toss out, another second round pick guy. This is more just not necessarily like, the Burden one for the 49ers just makes all kinds of sense because it's just like, point in Spider-Man with Deebo. But like, I really like Jayden Higgins from Iowa State, and I think he's super underrated, especially after he turned in the athletic scores he did. The production per target was incredible. When he was at the Power 4 level, the athletic package is elite for this class. He's damn near the front of the line in that. 6'4" and an 8, 214 pounds. 992 RAS. In other words, folks, that's a 99th percentile size adjusted athlete and a pure boundary receiver who can make plays downfield and tremendous hands. And last year too, I found this funny. Of course I love the film, as you know, Rob. I watch more college football live than any human being should, but in the spring, I love, and I'll have friends over some nights and we'll put the film up on the projector and watch it. I love doing all that, but I love the data too, and getting into that. And you find interesting things when you get deeper into it, things you miss in the moment, because you can't watch 134 teams simultaneously, and the cut-ups, you're going to miss some context. There's a metric that I have in my sheets, catchable target rate, which self-explanatory, right? The amount of targets that you got, how many were charted as catchable. Jayden Higgins last year, I don't think people realize that the Iowa State quarterback was
Brock Purdy.
Not Brock Purdy. He was not Brock Purdy. And like that kid, he's got some time, so I don't want to bash him too much, Rocco Becht, but there was some serious accuracy issues with that guy. And yet Higgins had the season. He did 87 catches, 1,185 yards, 9 touchdowns. Higgins, 51.2 catchable target rate last season. That was the lowest of the consensus top 7 receivers in this class, if you include Higgins. He had 130 targets. Only half of them were even considered catchable. And yet he converted 87 of them into receptions for almost 1,200 yards, almost 10 touchdowns.
Wow.
And he only dropped the ball twice. Folks, when they're saying 51.2%, what they're telling you is nearly half the balls that were thrown to him were outside of his frame. And he was coming down with a good chunk of those too. He is really, really good. And after the athletic, first of all, we seen him in Mobile. He was awesome there, as was his teammate Noel. They were destroying people. After that, after the last season, and now after the athletic profile we got from Higgins, we got to start talking about Higgins as a potential top 5 receiver in this class. And if the NFL doesn't draft him like that, any team that needs a receiver at the top of the second, including the 49ers, I would definitely advocate to take Higgins.
Okay, that was going to be my next question. Where does he ultimately end up? But you're saying top of the
I think it's going to be top of the second. Yeah, the steam is in there with him for whatever reason. And like, even though the pre-draft process, he has risen. Like, I think he was a bit slept on because earlier in the career he was at the FCS program. and then it's Iowa State, and then Iowa State had the NFL slot guy as well, right? So it's like some of those different things. But like, again, we were down in Mobile. No one could cover him, right? He's bigger than everyone. He's moving more fluidly than everyone. He drops nothing, right? And so naturally, no one could cover him one-on-one. And then he goes to the combine. It's like, holy shit, this guy's a better fucking athlete than we thought, right? Like he moves around well, but like I remember thinking when we were in Mobile, and I almost shouldn't even admit this because it's embarrassing after we got the athletic profile, but he reminded me a bit of a guy that we saw. It was either the year before or 2 years before. My years get but he reminded me of a smoother moving Michael Wilson, like a slightly better athlete, Michael Wilson. Mm-hmm. Like, because Michael Wilson, it was really difficult for people against him as well, because it was in Mobile in the one-on-ones. It was the big dude who was he ran good routes, and then he could throttle down on a dime. And you saw some of that with Higgins too in the body control stuff, but he was moving around the field better than Wilson. But I didn't think it was like upper echelon athlete, like again 99th percentile size adjusted athlete for receivers entering the NFL since the 80s. This dude's a premier athlete, and to me, I'm not going to argue with it if a team takes him in the back half of the first round. In fact, that's where he very well might end up on my board.
If you want more from Thor, check out fantasylife.com. There's an incredible amount of content. I was just perusing it before you hopped on. Unbelievable. It will make you a better, smarter fan. Thank you so much for the time, Thor. Appreciate it.
Always good talking to you, brother.